23. I thought we were recording already. Okay, well, we'll try that again. This is the Sunbury Services Committee meeting for June 7th, 2023. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Capel?
Here.
Mayor St. John?
Here.
Mrs. Cooper? Here. Mr. Neff?
Here.
All present.
I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes from our May 3rd, 2023 meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Cooper. Roll call?
Mr. Capel?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper? Yes. Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mayor St. John?
Yes.
All right.
All right. Getting right into a bunch of unfinished business. Right off the top, we have the Sunbury Estates trees. Mr. Hennessy and I talked earlier about a couple of potential options for remediation of the trees. Can we go over those, Daryl, please?
Yeah, so packet page 4 spelled out as follow-up to our meeting last month. And what I've included on your at the desk is just another version of the map. So you can see the red dots represent the the first 25-ish trees that we would focus on. That's based on the most recent survey done by a member of our team about a month or so ago. So anyway, we had talked about coming back to this meeting with some options. And these would be the options we would discuss with the residents and see if we could develop some kind of consensus with them. So just going through the page quickly, assumes that we're going to replace all of the trees, the maple trees, over the course of 7 to 10 years. And most of the trees out there are maple trees. Prioritize those trees where they've heaved the sidewalk 2 inches or more. So again, those are the ones that already have the red dot on them. And with an expectation to start this project fall of this year. So the 3 options that I put together, and again, there could be variations from these. The first one is to follow the city ordinance and basically where the homeowner is responsible for the maintenance of the sidewalk. So we would remove the tree, we would remove the stump. We would plant a new appropriate tree in the existing tree lawn. So I'm saying we'll get a little bit more feedback from the arborist on what the appropriate trees might be, but they're likely to be smaller. And smaller in terms of when they reach maturity, and may not create the kind of shade canopy that the maples are creating at the moment. But we would identify a tree, we would place it back in the tree lawn, and leave the property owner with the responsibility to repair the sidewalk. I think we had talked a little bit about expecting maybe for each panel of sidewalk that they replaced. I want to say it was $600-700, something like that, maybe. It's not a big expense for each panel, but at a minimum, there would be 1 panel and there may be more than that, certainly. So anyway, that would be option 1. Basically, the homeowner responsible for the sidewalk maintenance. We replace the tree. The second option is basically the city does the same things. We remove the tree, we place a tree in the tree island. But we would then make arrangements with a contractor to go out and do the concrete repair, and then we would assess the property owner the cost of the repair and collect it over some period of time. I put 18 months. I mean, that number can be 12 months, 24 months. There's no magic to that. I'm just suggesting that some time frame for the homeowner to pay us back. But again, homeowners responsible for at the end of the day the costs associated with that. But we've made it maybe a little bit easier for them because we've identified the contractor and we've gotten the contractor out there under some maybe master agreement where they might get a little bit better pricing. And then the third option is the city assumes the cost of fixing this situation. So we remove the tree and the stump. We plant a new shade tree in the front yard of the property owners. And then we assume the cost of repairing the sidewalk. So here, in exchange for repairing the sidewalk, a homeowner agrees to the placement of the tree in the front yard, which I believe is the current policy that we have with respect to new developments. So that would get us in line with the current practices in the city. Again, as the chairman and I spoke about this, I mean, there could be variations of any one of these, certainly variation on 3, but I just offer that up as maybe the starting point for a conversation with the community.
There's a lot of trees already in the front yard. I mean, how would we get another tree in the front yard?
Well, yeah.
If that happens, would they sit there and say, well, you can't put it here, now let's go put it in the backyard or side yard? I mean, I could leave.
I mean, I assume what we're trying to achieve here is, you know, the street tree, effect, right? The sidewalk, the shading, you know, the look and feel from the street. So if they had a tree in that place, I mean, I don't know that we would necessarily feel compelled to put one in the backyard unless you feel like you'd want to do that. Again, I think at the end of the day, we're trying to get that tree lined street kind of effect. So for a homeowner who maybe has one in the front yard, maybe there's another way to think about that. Maybe they don't have to add another tree. But I don't know. So you feel like there are a fair number of,
I mean, I guess I'm not
yeah,
100% certain, but I would think there's trees. But I mean, that's a little
Yeah.
older neighborhood, things have matured a little bit more.
You able to see the trees?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I was gonna say, that's a good question. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
Existing front yard trees. One of the things that I had recommended, at least as a point of discussion, was to add on to option 3. A possible variance of a street tree instead of a yard tree. You know, basically the exact same plan, just put the ornamental or slim root tree in the tree yard. As opposed to the shade tree. So, you know, the trade-off would be not quite as nice of a tree, but in the same place.
Say about 50% of the houses have a tree in their front yard. Most of them are offset. So you can pick the other side of the yard, I guess. Some are up against the house too.
But then,
okay,
then again, if the city's assuming all the cost, you could totally say, you know, we
Plant a tree in the front.
take all the costs, and if you already have a tree,
Right.
you don't get a tree, or something to that effect.
Right.
If the city's assuming all of the cost, I think that's a reasonable
Right.
way to approach.
yeah, well, I think that was the leverage in terms
Yeah.
of getting them to agree to placement of a tree in their front yard. Is that, you know, the city's gonna assume all the costs associated with that, so.
Including the sidewalk.
Including the sidewalk, yeah, repair.
I know if I had a tree in my front yard, I would not want a second tree in my front yard. I don't even necessarily want the first tree in my front yard. But
Yeah.
I'm interested in what the residents have to say about it. Any thoughts?
So do we think, yeah,
Plans?
I guess that's where I'm at too, is I want to hear what they have to say about it,
Mhm.
really.
do you think this represents a broad enough range of options?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I think so. That kind of wrinkle on number 3 was the only thing I was curious about.
Mhm.
I told Daryl this too. I think that we need to go into that meeting with trees in mind. Varieties of trees. I think that would be ideal. So if they kind of had an idea, here's what we're looking at putting here for each of the plans, or, you know, depending on which route we decide to go.
Now, and the new policy, like, we don't put any street trees at all, like, we do not allow street trees in that one anymore. Is that what's new now? Like, up to date, we don't do any trees there.
From the meadows on, I think, right?
Yeah, Meadows, Communities, Miller's Cove. Price Ponds, Rolling Hills.
All right, I know the last time we started, I think, with a 10-year plan that I got the sense the council wants to move maybe a little bit faster than that. Do you want me to just say a little bit faster than 7 to 10, or the range is okay?
10 was literally a number that I just said for a nice round number. So
The arborist.
I think doing it faster is perfectly fine. if
Yeah.
That's where everybody's head is at.
Like somewhere like 5 years.
Yeah.
So maybe we say this is a 5 to 7 year plan, you know, just try to expedite that a little bit.
Yeah, that,
What was the estimate for ones we'd have to replace right off the bat? How many?
I mean, it's about 25% of the trees, right?
Right.
It is
So,
about that, yep.
yeah, I mean, a 5-year plan makes sense then.
Mhm. Yeah, now again, there are other species of trees in there as well. I mean, we're just
Mhm.
talking about the maples, I think, at this point, but. All right, so we'll shorten the time frame, 5 to 7 years. Get started this fall. I assume that's where we want to be.
When you meet with the neighbors, I mean, I'm exaggerating here, but I think you've got to draw like almost like a barometer or a thermometer and say, here's the cost to you for this option, and this option. I mean, literally what we're saying, the recommended option is we're going to cover the cost, but there are going to be the stipulations to that, and that is we're going to determine the placement of the tree to an extent, like within the first 5 foot off the sidewalk or something like that. And the variety, if we leave it too open-ended, I think it's going to cause a lot of confusion for the execution.
Mhm.
And you'll get variable results. So if we say you can plant this one in your side yard, but and your neighbor's on a corner lot and you can't, I mean, it's got to be, I think, really clear.
What's your thoughts on the folks that already have the front yard tree then?
I mean, it's so variable based on either like the species of the tree in the front yard. A lot of them look like they were homeowner planted, honestly. Like, I saw a couple of birch that were right up against the house. I mean, I called that a yard tree, but if you put a street tree on the other side of the driveway, I mean, there was plenty of room for it to grow up near the sidewalk.
Okay, actually, and you raise a good point for a property owner who's got who's on a corner. Actually, they may end up having 2 trees. I think we probably need to be clear about that too.
I think the one thing you may want to ask is like, you don't want to force somebody to take a tree. If you're like, hey, we're going to fix the problem.
The tree is optional.
The tree, I think it has to be optional. I mean, if they planted 2 or 3 yard trees or something, yeah, it doesn't make sense to plant 4.
Yeah.
So next step then is to set up this community meeting.
Yeah, well, I'll set up a couple of them. I think we talked about, maybe trying to do a virtual option, at least one virtual option, try to find a location to meet with them directly. So.
There's a Facebook page for the community that we can spread the information. Great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
And if they have a better idea, like I would love to hear it. But I think we've looked at this so much, like these are the 3 clear options.
Yeah. Once the arborist said that they basically had to come out, I don't think we were left with many other options.
Right.
It was going to be one of these 3.
Right.
So.
Okay, moving on, thoroughfare and traffic control planning. Right, I'm reading a slightly older version of the agenda here. Nope, street program, sorry. Just kidding. I talked with Daryl with a different version of the agenda.
I know. Well, actually, Dan, why don't you kind of walk it, it's on page 5.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. The street bids were successful. We bid them out on the 18th. There were 4 bidders, one of which was ruled ineligible because they didn't have the appropriate paperwork. They were a higher bid as well. But the 3 accepted bids were from Strauser, Capstone and Associates, and Decker. The opinion of cost was $950,000. That includes the alternate and the base. And the 3 bids came in $880 for Strauser, $945 for Capstone, and $952 for Decker. Strauser Paving was the low bidder on the entire scope of the project, and we have checked their references, are comfortable with them, and we'll be recommending the bid be awarded to Strauser.
Have we ever done business with Strauser before? I was just curious. The first I could remember hearing the name.
I don't know because I haven't been here, but I can say that I have, both in the city of Worthington and city of Delaware. And they tend to be, they're good. And they're particularly good at pavement preservation type of work, like the cape sealing that we're doing. So that it's good to have them. That was a relief actually to have them involved with that, since that is a new thing for us.
This is good news.
Now that I've seen their name, I see their trucks everywhere. Once you have your eyes set on a new car or something, I see it everywhere.
Yeah.
right.
Right, so we do have it on the council agenda for action this evening. And what's actually the time frame? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, I did not announce the time frame, but the time frame is that we can't start until July. We have to get official approval from OPWC to start, and that will be on or near July 1st. And we have not met with Strasser yet to finalize the schedule with them, but we will do so soon.
Did the intent to complete before classes start?
Absolutely,
In
yes,
August.
that is the intention.
Okay. All right,
Can I
yeah.
mention just one thing? So, this is all great news. We came in significantly
Mhm.
under budget. Daryl, I talked to you a little bit. I can't remember, Dan, if I talked to you about it. There's still work to be done. Are we able to add other components like storm drain repair or curb replacement or, you know, any of like the speed bumps, you know what I mean? Like where pavement meets pavement and it heaves. You know, we've done that in the past when we've had excess funds.
We definitely can. There are certainly several areas where we would like to do that, and we'll talk with Strasser about getting that done as well.
Okay, great. Do we already have those identified or does our new services?
Well, we identified a lot of those types of
Yeah.
things at the initial bid with Alex and Daryl and Steve. And I don't know that any more have come up, but if they do,
Okay,
we'll add those to the list.
great, thanks.
All right, on to Walnut Street Stabilization Project.
So unless you've got more to say on it, I know we've submitted the grant materials.
Grant materials were submitted Friday.
Yep.
We're anxiously awaiting the conditions of the use of the monies and what they expect to see, how they see want to put together. So we'll get that, we'll schedule a kickoff meeting and proceed.
So again, my recollection was, I think we've got 2 years based upon the grant application in order to spend the funds.
That's
Complete
correct.
the project. So, 2025.
Okay. So we'll hear more next meeting?
I hope so.
Okay.
That is presuming we'll get the
Right.
materials.
Okay. Next up is near and dear to my house. Price Ponds and Rolling Hills drawdown and fountains. So this is stemming from a citizen who's one of my neighbors actually mentioning that there was a lot of damage being caused, erosion due to drainage coming from Price Ponds and into the Rolling Hills developments, where they were draining a strange little island pond.
Electric island.
Yes, Electric Island.
Is that what's noticed? Yeah, so.
Or power pole.
Yeah.
Right.
So Dan and I talked about that a little bit today, so I think he can give you a breakdown of kind of what happened and what may happen next, at least as it relates to the drawdown of, Electric Island.
As you know, they need to draw down the pond in order to eliminate a power pole island. They put on a mobile pumping station and they pumped it into a filter bag, and they intended for it to go overland into the stream, and all was done. They failed to recognize the fact that that stream goes to the pond at Rolling Hills. And it created that issue. And as soon as it was identified, they stopped. And I've asked them to obviously repair the issue at Rolling Hills and also provide an alternate pumping plan. They did provide me with an alternate plan, but it was not acceptable. It was basically same thing in different clothing. So I have asked them to go back and relook at that. I personally have not looked at what the optimal option is, but I'll work with them to make sure it doesn't continue to create those problems. It came from Basin 6 at Price Ponds, and it goes through that property. I think it's Price and Hill, and goes right into the Basin 3 at Rolling Hills there, and went right over the trail and took out the fill around that head wall and did some pretty significant damage.
That's unfortunate. I mean, given the weather, this would have been like the perfect time to do that. And it's really unfortunate that, I mean, they brought something like you would see on Gold Rush, the TV show, like that type of pumping machine. I mean, it was pumping out, I don't know, 10,000 gallons an hour or something.
It
It's massive.
was coming out, yeah. To their credit, they at least have that filter bag at the end of it, so that's not bringing all the,
So.
Sediment out.
Right.
but I have no resolution as of this moment, but I will be working on it this week.
Thank you.
Just glad to have it
And then-
stopped.
And then related to that, you had asked the question about the fountains in those ponds.
That's right.
And so,
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that too.
We had, I started seeing questions about it, and I know when I was in Sunbury Meadows, the questions came up, and I know that the ponds as part of, stormwater retention, I was told they couldn't have fountains in them or anything like
Okay.
that. They can't?
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
so then I had bad information the first time
Prevents
around.
algae and stuff.
I wanted to make sure that I had the correct information to take back to anybody who asked those kinds of questions as folks move in and take over the HOA and such.
I hate that I continue to do this, but I'm gonna reference other cities. I've worked in as city engineer, because I haven't worked here long enough. My understanding, I believe this is how it works in Sunbury as well. Those basins will be maintained by the homeowners association, which means they would maintain the fountains. Typically, either the homeowners association, once they take over the ownership, they will install those aerators, or the developer will do that at their dime, but then when they turn over the pond, they turn over the aerator. I don't know what the conversations have been in the past here in the city. That is something we could request in the future, certainly. But as far as I know, it has not been done to this point.
and it's not shown up in the plan, right?
And it's not, it is
not-
definitely not in my plans. It's not, and the plat doesn't reference any.
I think the mills are the only fountains I'm aware of.
And that was added after it was developed. The one that was the only one that I'm aware of that was installed before the HOA turned over was Communities at Sunbury, the one right in front of Sunbury Christian Church.
Yeah.
A really nice pond. They've got,
Oh,
I think they have
forgot
at
about
least
that, yeah.
one, if not two or three fountains. It
Okay.
always stays clear.
I would like for the retrofits, I guess I'll call it, if they are, if the homeowner associations do intend to do that, I'd like to work with them to make sure it's effective. I mean, it's not just an aesthetic feature, but it also takes care of algae and these fountains are typically sold with an aerator that has a fountain, and then they have
Mhm.
bubblers that you can set around the shallow points of the basin to keep that algae down as much as
Is it
possible.
typically recommended for a body of water that size to put a fountain in it?
Most definitely. Most of these basins are designed such that they're relatively shallow.
Yeah.
Are not like a natural built or natural pond.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is it something we should be thinking about adding to our subdivision regulations for?
I would say that it could be added in there at the discretion of administrator, engineer, council, that would be required. Yes, I wouldn't absolutely require it. But I think it could certainly be added in there. In Delaware, it was a part of the design, what Delaware had a design manual, which was subdivision regulations on steroids. And that did have exactly what I just said, at discretion of the city engineer. Fountain will be included, as well as other safety features around the ponds. I mean, the national approach has been to add buoys, lifesavers
Right.
around the ponds as
Columbus
well.
is doing that. In some of theirs.
And if they're located near a major roadway with the potential to drive off the road into the pond requiring guardrails, which is never popular unless they're decorative, and it's still not very popular.
Right.
Okay. Good information. On the topic of water, we've got Reservoir Drawdown Project, or as I'm going to call it from now on, that dam project.
That's exactly what I call it. That dam project has been complicated by a program by the Iowa National Division of Natural Resources called the Dams and Reservoir Safety Program, requiring us to do some significant improvements to both of the dams by adding additional spillways, plugging unused piping that was used during the water treatment component or time, and some other smaller items, but we're weighing that against another option, which may be to make it exempt from those regulations. Both of them have some upsides and some downsides. I'd like to put that information together and bring it to you at the next meeting if possible. There's a direct relationship with Tim's not here anymore, with the Parks project, because no matter what happens, we do have to put an outlet structure, storm system in, about $150,000 storm sewer. But all that needs to be done before we can proceed with the park project. So I also need to work with another division of ODNR to get an extension on that Nature Works grant, which is definitely doable. There are some downsides to that as well. So I'll bring it together in a package next meeting so I can explain in full detail.
Is this all a result of the Michigan dams and levee failures from 2020? I mean, is this fallout from that?
The dams and reservoir safety program, I worked on it in 1980s in South Carolina. It's been around a long time, and this dam has been subject to that. I'm not sure that it had gotten the attention that it somehow it's become more visible over the last few years.
Understood. Thank you.
Just for my own benefit, can you define in this context spillway?
Spillway is an outlet structure. It's where it could be a simple pipe, a culvert pipe at the top where the water goes through. It can be a cut earthen weir where you cut a low spot in the dam and it goes over that. Or it could be what we have out there at the reservoirs, which is a concrete structure which goes down into the bottom of the pond, has a pipe that goes out. When you want to release the water, you open the valve and lets that water go down through that.
So they're saying we need a secondary.
Need a secondary one for.
Got it.
It's a very unusual situation because those reservoirs get no water other than rainwater. So the potential for them failing due to a catastrophic rain event is very unlikely. That doesn't mean the dams can't fail, and certainly if it did fail, it would create some problems. So again, there's pluses and minuses to that program and the appropriateness in the situation.
Okay.
If you want to see a big one, go to Allen Creek Dam. Just look on either right or left side and you'll see.
Right.
I mean, they've just graded it in a way that if it overflows, the water is actually gonna like run away from the creek.
I know what you're talking about. Used to go there all the time. Okay, back to the one I tried to jump to way back at the beginning, the thoroughfare and traffic control planning. So this is the one that's, we got to get a grant to get a grant, right?
Gotta get a grant to get a
Yeah.
grant, that's right. Sorry about this, I didn't get this one in the packet in time, but working with, well, let me just say this, with the mayor and Mrs. Cooper, we've formed a traffic working group. Actually, yeah, Damon, you've been invited to these meetings too.
And I just never come. Sorry, I'm terrible.
No, it's okay, that's not the point. But one of the things we have been talking about was, so first of all, really, it's about traffic calming on Sunbury Meadows, and we can give you a little bit of an update on where that stands. But one of the other things that the committee has started to take a little bit of a look at is this Safe Streets for All program. This was talked about last year. I think I know Wes had done the briefing on it. And after working with Bob Keeterly, put together the framework of maybe what could be an application. So as you said, Mr. Chairman, it is a grant to get a grant. So what Bob is suggesting is that we would seek a planning and demonstration grant. What he's identified down here at the bottom are potential funding targets. This could be part of the plan in terms of things that are studied from a safety perspective. How are they working? Where are improvements needed? What kind of a demonstration could we do as it relates to any one of these particular areas of concern? And again, once having demonstrated that the recommended safety action is effective, there is an opportunity to seek an implementation grant. What Bob has done is he's also attached for you a copy of the crash history in and around these streets that are principally identified as the funding targets. He's talking about a $140,000 grant. It would require a city match of 20%. And the applications for these are going to be due here in early July. So we will have an opportunity to come back to the services committee with a little bit more detail on what that looks like. But just wanted to get your sense on whether or not you think this is headed in the right direction. Are these the type of funding targets or safety areas that would be high on your list, or if there are other places that you think we ought to be thinking about? We certainly take that under consideration as well. So anything else you'd want to add?
No, other than that, the application isn't too onerous. It's probably a week's worth of work. Maybe.
And I'd forgotten the number, but it's a pretty sizable implementation grant. I mean, I want to say, what is it, $1 million?
Up to $1 million. Yeah.
Up to $1 million. So it can be pretty,
Actually, maybe more than $1 million.
yeah, it's pretty sizable. The other thing, maybe just to kind of also note is that, and when we talk a little bit about the summary of the results from the strategic planning session, I note that there are a few items on here that overlap what you had identified as priority items for action as well. So we could hone in on those a little bit more if that's where you wanted to go, but this is what Bob would put on his list.
Maybe synchronicity or at work, but Daryl, you and I were just talking about, I think on Friday, about should we pursue a speed study because we had got some feedback from residents. I said, I don't even think I think I may have heard this, but this isn't what was in the back of my mind. And I said, I would much rather focus on a safety study than a speed study. And how do we effectively move people, not really focused on how fast they're going, but just to minimize stops and continuous movements and making sure range of sight is good, things like that. So this is great. What do you think, Damon?
What would we be looking at for the initial grant as our proposal? Just very generally, what would that look like? Would it be addressing one of these major project ideas, or where we do the proof of concept portion?
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, fundamentally, it's a comprehensive safety plan. It's
Right.
It's the development.
So
that's most of what the funding would be for. As
Got
far
it.
as the demonstration, it could be any one of these, right? I mean,
That's correct.
Yeah.
Or it could be all of it. It could be a
a little on some. Okay.
comprehensive citywide study as well.
Okay. Any more questions on that before we move on? I like it.
I see like pedestrian safety, all that, that's nice. Is any one of these targets, does that kind of have the connectivity to east and west as pedestrian crossing over Route 3 or under Route 3 or getting people safely across Route 3?
I think that might be part of the safety analysis, or I mean, even like a policy and process change. Potentially like, hey, if we're sending a bike trail that carries this many anticipated riders across a road that has this many vehicle trips, you must build a bridge or a tunnel or something like that.
Yeah, there could be a mobility component to it, which includes all forms of transportation, biking, pedestrian, mass transit, et cetera.
Yeah, Bob wasn't necessarily suggesting what he thought the solution was. And he, when, at least in the time that I was talking to him, he didn't say it was about, the pedestrian hazards associated with crossing Route 3, but I guess
It's an assessment and a planning effort, right?
yeah,
Kind of like the district level plan for Sunbury Parkway, like we're coming up with the concepts, but if we end up not implementing it or doing nothing with it, it's just a plan that sits on the shelf. This is
So the plan, getting awarded the grant from the plan, doesn't necessarily indebted us to doing any particular follow-up regarding the implementation.
okay.
All right.
all right, well, we'll keep working toward it, and then at the next meeting, hopefully have the narrative spelled out and the application, if not ready, almost ready. Okay.
All right, last item is street sweeping services.
Yeah, so this is just a little bit of an update. I don't think we're gonna be able to show it.
I mean, a slow boat trail.
So maybe you saw our video online.
I did.
Yeah.
We're just gonna show you the video online.
Was the actual video of the aerial stuff, was that of streets?
That was us. Yeah, so we had
Was
asked,
that down by the middle school?
I don't know where he got the footage, but we told Joey that they were out there, go out and get some footage. And then he did. And then we said, and then we gave him a little bit of verbiage in terms of some voiceover.
In the city of Sunbury. Street sweeping allows for the collection and removal of litter, leaves, and other visible debris that gather in the street gutters. This debris can block storm drain facilities, causing localized flooding during heavy rains. Street sweeping also helps to remove metal particles and other hazardous waste left by passing vehicles. These particles can be extremely harmful to fish and other wildlife if they reach our creeks.
Well, we might have been able to say a little bit more about the benefits, but I think that's,
really
an attempt to educate the community on why we did it.
Mhm.
And, give them a little bit of interesting footage about what a street sweeper does. We ended up removing approximately 30 yards of waste from the gutter system
Wow,
in that round. Yeah.
that's
So
great.
there's 30 yards that did not go down our storm sewers.
Is entertain me for a second, is there a regulation for parking, street parking to,
There's
is
gotta
there
be.
policy
I'm
to
telling
get?
you, after this time, I was actually upset with the amount of
That's-
people that were parked on the street.
That's a huge challenge, yeah.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I think we talked about maybe a better way to get the signage out. Maybe more of it, spread out a little bit deeper into the neighborhoods, is maybe a way to do that, but. I don't know, if we want to be more aggressive about staying off, the problem is, we don't exactly know what the schedule is going to be. I mean, we know roughly what it's going to be. And now that he's done it a few times, maybe we can get even more precision on that. Maybe that would help.
There's no comparison here between like the city of Columbus, what they do, and Sunbury, but every single street sign in the city of Columbus has street sweeping every third Thursday. I mean, you will be towed, and then every single Shamrock truck you've ever seen is towing cars the entire way, and then a
Yeah.
fleet of street sweepers are coming behind them. But I mean, it's very predictable, and you do it once and then you never do it again. I'm not suggesting that. I think we do need to do a better job with communication. Facebook, I think, is a means, but I think there's got to be more like on the ground signage or something. So, peer pressure from the neighbors is doing something. If not, okay, one or two more cycles, I think we're into tow mode.
We have tried to use the HOAs to help us push out information, but I don't know that they have a regular enough communication with their residents.
Yeah, it varies.
Facebook again.
It varies.
Yeah, okay.
I did like that the signs were out in the front of the neighborhood. That was a nice reminder. But I do think you're right. If you got them deeper into the neighborhood, like just on a little
Yeah,
post or something.
right. That's exactly what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
that'd
I
be-
think my personal feedback on the actual signs, like the orange and white gets your attention, but the actual sign is very small.
It is.
Relative, so I don't know what we do, but we need to do a better job with communicating so we can hold folks accountable. Get the results. Overall, I think they do a great job. I mean, you notice a big difference in the debris on the street.
Yeah, 30 yards.
So, yeah, exactly.
30 yards difference.
All
All right.
right, well, Mr. Chairman, there is one other item that was on the agenda that, I don't know if you missed it. The GIS mapping
Oh, I
project.
did.
It's okay.
I have a bad habit of doing that.
It's a lot on the agenda
You were
tonight. so.
excited to talk about the traffic.
Yeah, traffic.
That's right, I was, when the dam project, right?
Yep, so just a quick update on the mapping project. So CT has been actively working to build out the base maps. And I think for the most part, we have those and we're just reviewing them, make sure that they contain the information that you saw the first time when they had it on their, I'll say, test site. But the other thing that I really wanted to reference here is that Dan and I worked together a little bit on trying to get a handheld Trimble device and working with our service department to begin to add some additional layers that we haven't, that we don't have at the moment. So we think we've identified the tool. And worked with the CT's engineer to make sure that, again, the data will feed into the base maps that they're working on. And we've set our service department, we've asked one of the summer employees to basically go out, when we haven't started it yet. But to basically go out and map the stormwater system as kind of a starting point. And the reason for that is that when we've talked to the Soil and Water Conservation District, I mean, they really wanted us to get out there and field test their map. So they had done the map that we use, but they don't feel 100% confident that, you know, it is what we've got on the screen at the moment. So the plan is to use that as kind of a launching pad for being able to build additional layers in. So hopefully this summer, like I said, we'll have an employee out there, a seasonal employee out there doing that, kind of testing that system. And
Is it just like an iPhone, or are we talking about really like a survey type device that has like altitude and lasts long?
It's kind of like a big black, remember the Blackberries? It's like
Yeah.
yellow. But it does have sophisticated GPS unit in it that receives a satellite signal and brings you down to within 1 meter accuracy of your location. And it does assume when we're getting, does elevation as well. The accuracy, that's probably within 6 inches.
7:13 p.m.
There you go.
Speaking of technology.
there you go. So yeah, just want to give you a little bit of an update on kind of what's happening with our GIS program.
Okay.
There you go.
Does anybody else have anything for good of the order? Any new business?
There's a lot of construction going on, well, in Magnolia Park in particular. The big one at Intermediate School, really, their driveways, there's no pavement that you could notice. It's ground up. They are working to complete road work from Cheshire Road south on Weatherby Drive to connect into Price Ponds. They've got a very narrow window to do it the school year. When it starts, they have to be done. So if you drive back there, very heavy construction traffic, and they may be limiting access to the big one at Intermediate School through the summer just from Cheshire Road. Does that sound right, Dan?
That's absolutely
Okay.
correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so a little bit of the chatter that had been going on as it relates to that was, we wanted to make sure that the schools at some point, again, were very involved in which roads stayed open, what kind of access we had to the school, whether it was, you know, principally during the school years when they're primarily concerned. But obviously, we want to get that done before they get back into the school year. But we do need to maintain, some level of access back to that back to school. So I think that kind of originated from our end, just to make sure that they were fulfilling a commitment I think that they'd made to the schools. So.
Go ahead.
I had received a resident concern or complaint, Mistletoe Court. I think it's right down the street from Councilwoman Cooper. I believe there's a light pole, but no light. They had mentioned that they don't think it's ever actually had a street light on the section of road. And they had said it's completely dark for about an entire block. I'm sure we have more sections like that, but I just didn't know if we could validate that.
I texted a neighbor and she said that there is a street light. She doesn't think it works.
Okay.
She said she hasn't noticed it being dark because where she's at, everyone has
Like porch lights.
porch lights. But she agreed that I didn't tell her that you said that, but she said she doesn't think it works, but she would look tonight.
Okay. When I did a street view of it, it didn't actually have like a light terminal. It was more like a light pole, but no light.
What's the street again?
Mistletoe Court. It's in the gardens.
Stop by and say hi.
Yeah. Ride bikes with the kids.
All right.
Thank you.
Does anybody have anything else? I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, Ms. Cooper. Roll call.
Mr. Capel?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Neff? Mayor St. John?
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Yeah.
Thanks.